I think it's safe to say my reading slump is over. Hello and welcome back to Bookish, and welcome to a kind of a quick Saturday video in which I'm going to talk about the 5 books I've read so far in November. All of them, I believe, works of nonfiction. So really off to a good start here with my nonfiction November reading. I have some more titles I want to get to later on in the month and maybe add in some new things that I hadn't thought about getting to yet. But I thought I would real quickly run through the books I talked about, or the books I'd read, and give it kind of a brief overview of my thoughts about those books and how good they were. 2 of the books are audiobooks, and I listen to them, mainly while taking walks, for exercise purposes. But that's one of the things I like to do with audiobooks is kind of exercise while listening to a book. The first one of those was a biography of Charles Dickens by the English biographer Claire Tomalin. This is the second biography of an author by Tomalin I've read. I've also read Jane Austen, A Life by Tomalin. And while I think, the biography does its job, it gives information about Dickens. It gives an indication of who at least Tomalin believes Dickens was as a person, as a father, as a husband, as a philanthropist, as a writer, as a friend. It does all of that, fairly well. And I think, as with most biographies of writers or individuals, you can get a basic idea of the person from the biography. But Tomalin has a style as a biographer that I just don't think that I like very much. There are a couple things about it that kind of rub me the wrong way. One is a tendency to get things out of chronological order. I'm probably, because I'm simple-minded, kind of like for my biographies to go in a fairly straight chronological order and not to mix up events. So occasionally you'll see in the Dickens biography, Tomalin kind of goes beyond the events of Dickens' life to talk about his work, and then backtracks to talk about his life in between. And that's one of those things that just kind of throws me off as a reader. Additionally, I think Tomalin is a good bit judgmental of Dickens. Not that, I'm not trying to suggest that the biography should have been a hagiography or that it's wrong to kind of question Dickens about lots of things. Certainly Dickens is a complicated figure and a lot of unpleasantness about him, but it feels a little judgmental about Dickens, and particularly I think it's sometimes judgmental about Dickens' work. I kind of wish she'd stuck more to the events and talking about Dickens' life than an evaluation of his work. And so, that kind of bothered me a little bit. Since this is the second biography of Tomalin I've read, I think I'll probably try to avoid her biographies moving forward. I remember not particularly, I remember not particularly being enamored of the Jane Austen biography that she wrote either. The second book that I listened to on audiobook is Minor Feelings by Cathy Park Huang. This is a book in which Huang examines or talks about, or goes into, or has essays about the experience of being a Korean American, or in a broader sense, an Asian American. And, not just the variety of discrimination, racism, microaggressions that are a part of the life of Asian Americans, but how that affects Asian Americans as they think about themselves, how that affects the art they create, how that affects the life that they create. And I found the essays to be pretty good. They are oftentimes really personal essays about Wong's relationship with her friends that she met when she was a graduate student or an art student, and about those relationships, and about how her relationship with 2 other Asian young women kind of gave her these insights into what the Asian American experience does and expects from particularly Asian American women. And then a really powerful essay, I thought, about an artist who was essayed and murdered, an Asian American artist who was essayed and murdered, and kind of how that was, and the way in which that story was treated, and for a large part overlooked, is a part of kind of the Asian American experience as well. As her point was that it had been a young white female artist who'd been essayed and murdered, then a lot more would have been made of it at the time. It would have been a lot bigger issue. And I thought that there were a lot of really good thoughts in the essays, a lot of really good kind of moments where I had to stop and think, about how I had viewed the Asian American community and how I might have been guilty of some of the things that she talks about. And have I moved beyond that, or do I still have some of those ideas, ingrained in me that causes me to react a certain way to stories involving Asian Americans, the variety of Asian Americans, and the difference in those experiences and backgrounds, etc. And so I think for that reason that the book is really good. Occasionally I felt like we were a little bit too much in Cathy Park Wong's own problems, her own issues, her own family, her own mother, her own relationships, her own friendships was a little bit beyond, what I was interested in, perhaps, in exploring all those things. But I thought the essays on the whole were good, and the book is valuable. The third book I want to talk about today is one that I've talked about. I did a little review on my channel before about revisionist history and talking about Black AF history, the unwhitewashed story of America by Michael Harriot. And so I don't want to go into a great deal of depth about this here, but essentially what Harriot is doing here is similar. He's not copying Howard Zinn, but it's similar to what Howard Zinn did in the People's History of the United States. And he's kind of tracing, going through American history from beginning to more or less modern times, but focusing on the experience of Black people in the United States of America, the contributions they made, the things they endured, the way they overcame, and really putting American history through that lens. And I think it was really good. As the point I made in that video was, we don't have to accept everything an author says in a book as being the most accurate way of interpreting events, or you don't have to accept that everything that an author says in a book isn't just there for provocation purposes. That doesn't mean the book doesn't work in an important way and contribute to our knowledge of history by making us question. I definitely think Black AF history will make you question things. And if it doesn't, then maybe you've made your mind up a little bit too firmly. And so I think it's a really valuable work, and I really enjoyed reading it. It's written in a humorous, confrontational style with lots of bits about food, which I found to be really entertaining. And just kind of a good book, I thought, which kind of makes you reassess some things you might have thought about from American history. So that was the third book. The fourth book I read was Bird by Bird by the author Lamott. And this is a book which, it's a book about writing and life, I think is the subtext or the subtitle of the book. And certainly it is that. It is about Lamott's, ideas about writing and about how a writer approaches writing, about how a writer's life shapes, feeds, becomes the source of what that writer writes. And in that way, it was, a really good book, I think, about how to approach writing, how to think about writing. Lamott had taught writing courses, and so these are kind of things that she taught to her students at various points in time. And I went into the book with really high expectations, expecting this to just be kind of a revolutionary book about writing, which is one of those things that I like to do, one of my hobbies, one of the things I engage in. That would be a really revolutionary book about writing, which would teach me a whole lot of stuff, and it didn't. And so as a result, it's disappointing. This isn't a fault. I was disappointed in the book, I should say. This isn't the fault of the book. This is the fault of the way social media works and the way information is disseminated. There weren't very many ideas in Bird by Bird that I hadn't encountered other places in terms of writing advice from other writers, online videos. A lot of the ideas have already been kind of processed. The idea of giving yourself permission to write a bad first draft, that's something that's in Bird by Bird. It's something that's pretty, common out there. The idea of, finding some people to act as beta readers, the, concerns about writing groups, and, anyway, those ideas are all in there. And so it didn't strike me as anything particularly new. And I think that then led to my kind of irritation, my growing irritation with her style and her approach and her kind of, I just felt like overly jokiness in the book, which by the end of the 200 or so, 240 pages or so, had really begun to kind of just to cease to be funny to me. And as I said, I was disappointed in the book. I'm not sure the book is disappointing, if that makes sense. But I'm glad I read it. I'm glad I I now know what the book is all about, and for that reason, I think it's worthwhile if you are, someone who writes, then you want to know kind of about writing lifestyle, approaches to writing, thoughts about writing. I think it'd be really valuable there. The best book I've read so far this month would be The Message by Ta-Nehisi. This is his new book, in which essentially it contains 3 essays that are related to writing and trips that he took. The first trip he takes is to Senegal, where he stays in the car, and it becomes kind of, for a period of 10 days to 2 weeks, he becomes kind of immersed in the culture of Senegal and meets people, eats food, goes to places, does touristy things, does non-touristy things. And in a sense, what the first essay is about is kind of about his father and his father's desire to learn, to know, to read, to gather information through reading. And in a sense, Coates seems to feel like in some ways he had achieved a knowing his father hadn't gotten to know, because he actually went to Africa, and he kind of then in that essay explores, I think, the relationship between Black Americans to Africa and how it's thought about, how it's been thought about in the past, how activists may have thought about it in the 60s and 70s, and then kind of his own kind of distillation of all that information and how it affected him. And I thought it was really, really effective essay. He's constantly talking about walking out into the water and thinking or looking back towards where the United States would be, and imagining the disruption, the terror, the horror of being kidnapped and sent across the ocean and enslaved, and those kind of things. The second essay is really much more about his writing and how he thinks about the books he's written, and in particular, how Between the World and Me has affected his thoughts about writing, the importance of writing and books, because that's a book which in our current atmosphere has been banned by lots of libraries, and lots of school districts have banned the teaching or the use of that book in teaching. And in this book, he goes to South Carolina, where a teacher's job is under threat because she's been using the book to teach an advanced writing class. And she's not actually teaching the content of the book, but teaching the book as a form of writing. And he goes and he experiences this, and it makes him think about and rethink about the importance of words and books as ideas and ways of bringing about changes in thinking, both their limitations and their successes. And I thought it was really good, and I thought it spoke to the moment we're in right now. And then the best essay is the last one. It's the longest. And in this one, Coates talks about his trip to Palestine and Israel. And in that, we see him come to grips with the relationship between Israel and the American South of Jim Crow and South Africa, and the idea that what Israel has established, perhaps for all the right reasons, for maybe reasons that are perfectly justified, is a replication of that, a situation in which Palestinians are treated at best as second-class citizens, which they're denied all of their rights, in which their land is being taken through the process of settlement, and the ideas behind that, the Zionist ideas behind Israel becoming a place with as much land as possible, at the same time as few Arabs as possible, and how that plays itself out, and then how that affected him and his thinking as an American, that he was a part of he was a citizen of a country that in a sense was enabling Israel to carry out a system very similar to the one, as he writes, that we helped to bring down in South Africa, and the system that we got rid of mostly in the 1950s and 60s in terms of Jim Crow and racism and segregation. I thought the essay was incredibly powerful, well documented. It is a great work of reportage, and in a sense, he is saying something about himself. He wrote an essay for the Atlantic, which he worked for, about reparations, about the United States paying reparations to the families of the formerly enslaved and the difficulties in that. And in the process, he realized that he was talking about the United States paying reparations now, while the United States is involved in a situation which is replicating the events which require perhaps reparations here in the United States. And I just thought it was really, really good, really thought-provoking, as is oftentimes true sometimes with books that I read. I'm not sure I grasped every single thing that Coates was going for, but I thought it was a really thought-provoking, informative, really well-written and impassioned book. And so I would highly recommend The Message. The most of all the books. Not that I read a bad book this month, but of all the books I read, probably that would be the one I'd recommend the most. Anyway, there you go. There's my kind of wrap-up of my November reading, my nonfiction November reading so far this month. If you've read any of these books, have any ideas about anything I've said, please leave those in the comment section down below. And as always, thank you for watching.